because my dad cared about me. He wanted me to be street smart because he didn't think I'd be academic smart. And so he made me accountable at a young age. So when I was 9, I had to pay $7.50 a week to live at the house, to pay for clothing, food, and rent. He started charging me for it to make me face the real world. And I ended up building a landscaping company when I was 9 with 9 employees and doing things around the neighborhood, and made me accountable for everything, to dot everything, to pay for gas, to pay for everything.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the One Shop Movement podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of entrepreneurs, business people, amazing leaders that are out there that are making it happen and have made it happen. And I'm super excited today because we have arguably, certainly in my 20-year journey in entrepreneurship, as someone that I've followed thoroughly, and most entrepreneurs would have or definitely will recognize the name, but have been impacted by the work that he's done. In fact, out of the 50 amazing leaders I've interviewed on this podcast, 4 of them have actually said that he's changed their life, whether it's a book or the breakthrough experience or whatever it is, an event. So I am honored to have Dr. Demartini on the show. He's an author, a speaker, he's a specialist in human behavior. His work around highest values and values is amazing. So we're going to talk to him about all of his superpowers and really try and, as we do on this show, dive deep into the stories and also pull out the wisdom and education from these amazing leaders. And I'm going to even ask a question about my personal circumstance as well. So thank you for taking the time to jump on the show, Dr. Demartini. No worries. I think I always like to start first is to really understand the backstory of every entrepreneur. And, I know yours is going to be quite thorough. So, you may want to skip over a few parts because we could be here for days doing that because of your amazing journey. But yeah, I'd love to hear about where did it all begin? Why did you choose the path that you chose? And, anything that you feel is valuable to share.
Well, since this is mainly entrepreneurs, I'll start at a young age. When I was very, very young, in fact, I was born, I had an arm and leg deformity. And my arm was turned in and my leg was turned in. And I had to wear braces from 1.5 years to 4 on arm and leg. I also had a speech impediment. I couldn't speak properly. So I had learning problems. When I got to first grade, my teacher eventually saw that I wasn't going to be able to do like the other kids and asked my parents to come there and had a discussion with them in front of me and said, I'm afraid your son will never be able to read, he'll never be able to write, he'll never be able to communicate, he'll never mount anything, he won't go very far in life. But if you put him into sports, now that he's got out of his braces, he wants to run. That seems to be where he's really focused. So they wanted to encourage me to go into sports, baseball at the time. Because my dad cared about me, he wanted me to be street smart because he didn't think I'd be academic smart. And so he made me accountable at a young age. So when I was 9, I had to pay $7.50 a week to live at the house, to pay for clothing, food, and rent. He started charging me for it to make me face the real world. And I ended up building a landscaping company when I was 9 with 9 employees and doing things around the neighborhood, and made me accountable for everything, to dot everything, to pay for gas, to pay for everything, rental of equipment and everything. So my entrepreneurial spirit started at age 9. But then I ended up dropping out of school because of learning problems and became a street kid doing odd jobs, like little entrepreneur jobs. And I eventually made it to California, made it to Hawaii, surfing. I got into the sport of surfing. Texas wasn't a surf capital. California and Hawaii was. So I went to California, hitchhiked to California, went on to Hawaii. And there I almost died. And in the recovery of that, I met an amazing man one night at a talk that inspired me. And for the first time in my life, after listening to him speak, I thought maybe I could learn to read and maybe someday I could be able to speak properly. And I really deeply wanted to learn and not be a dunce. I wanted to be intelligent. And this man inspired me so much that night that I thought maybe, just maybe, I could overcome that with his help. And I went on a journey, and this is now going on 48 years ago. I was 17 at that time. I was just turning 18. And I was on a journey from that moment on to overcome those learning problems, eventually do it, eventually learn to read and excel at reading and become a scholar and become a teacher. And for now, 47, almost 48 years, that's all I've wanted to do. That's what I do. I travel the world. I've been to 154 countries speaking, and I share everything that I can research that will help maximize human awareness potential with as many people as I can. And because I felt blessed to be able to overcome my learning problems and be able to do that. And now I'm very grateful for that whole journey. There's nothing I would had done differently. It's just a magnificent journey to be able to do that because I needed every one of those steps along the way to get where I am today. So I'm an entrepreneur. I started out as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I love helping entrepreneurs fulfill whatever their deepest, most inspiring, most meaningful objectives and vision and mission in life is. That makes me inspired every day.
And just on that, like 48 years on the journey you've just spoken about, and I always talk to people about adversities and challenges. Obviously, you shared one of a near-death experience and overcoming some of the challenges you had physically and speaking. What other challenges, would you say that have impacted along that journey as well?
What challenges did I face? The first challenge was attempting to go back to school after being a high school dropout. I left school when I was really 13, 14. And I took a GED and guessed and passed. Not because of any knowledge of reading it, I just guessed and somehow miraculously passed. I eventually took another test and did the same. I got into school and I failed. First class I took in trying to go to college was a failure. And in that moment of failure, I got a 27. I needed a 72 to pass. I got 27. Everybody else was above 75. I was down at 27. And all I could hear is my first grade teacher telling me, he'll never read, he'll never write, he'll never communicate, he'll never mount anything, never go very far in life, won't amount to anything. And I went crying home from my school and curled up in a fetal position underneath this little Bible stand, which you may not be able to see here, but there's a stand here that my mom had at her house. And she came home from shopping and she saw me sitting or laying curled up underneath this stand, Bible stand. And she saw me there crying and she didn't know she hadn't seen me cry in a long time. She said, "What happened, son?" I said, "I blew the test. I guess I don't have what it takes. I guess I'll never be able to read and write." And she then paused for a second and said something that only a mother could say, which is something that was deeply meaningful to me. She said, "Son, whether you become a great teacher and philosopher and travel the world like you dream about, whether you return to Hawaii and ride giant waves like you've done, or you return to the streets and panhandle as a bum, I just want to let you know that your father and I are going to love you no matter what you do." And when she said that, my hand went into a fist. I looked up and I saw a vision the night I met the teacher that inspired me in Hawaii. And I saw this vision of me standing and speaking. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading. I'm going to master this thing called learning. I'm going to master this thing called speaking and teaching. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance. I'm going to pay whatever price to give my service of love across this planet. I'm not going to let any human being on the face of this planet, and not even myself, interfere with that. And I had a determination that I can't describe There was a no turning back. There was no option. We're going for it. And I am going to master this. And I hugged my mom. I went into my room. I got a dictionary out, and I started memorizing 30 words a day in that dictionary over the next few years until that dictionary was memorized. And I grew in vocabulary and grew and eventually passed school, and then went on to read 18 to 20 hours a day on anything and everything that could help maximize human beings. So when an individual has a no turning back, only going forward perspective, amazing divine providence and human sovereignty meet. And there's a power of that clarity that can make a difference. There's no obstacle that an entrepreneur can't endure and transcend if their vision and their mission and their message is greater than the obstacle. You can't let the world on the outside dictate your destiny from the inside. I said on The Secret many years ago, when the voice and the vision on the inside is louder than all opinions on the outside, then you master your life.
Yeah.
About months later, my mom asked me for what do I want for my birthday. So I was born on Thanksgiving Day. I said, Mom, I want the greatest teachings on the face of the earth, the greatest writings by the greatest minds who ever lived. And she said, you sure you don't want a t-shirt? I said, no, Mom, I want the greatest teachings on the planet. And so she contacted her brother, who's my uncle, Uncle Ralph. And as a gift, this gentleman sent 2 giant 6 by 6 by 6 foot wooden crates of books to my house on a flatbed truck. They drove them down there. And I remember going out there, they put them on the ground and opened them up with a crowbar, these crates. And I carried thousands of books into my room and left this little yoga mat facing the sun. And my room was just filled with books. And I just spent 18 to 20 hours a day learning, trying to catch up with the learning that I had not had. And I then started to excel. When you fill your day with the highest priority action that truly inspires you, where there's no turning back, and you just keep incrementally building momentum towards what it is that you absolutely love to do, that you feel called to do, that's a service that means deeply the difference you want to make. Nobody on this planet can stop you.
Yeah.
Nobody. Because you're unstoppable when you're authentically pursuing what is deeply most inspiring. And that's what's happened in my life. I feel that I'm on a mission, and I have a message, and I have a vision, and my vitality in life is directly proportionate to the vividness of that vision.
And one of the messages I sign out with this, the vision that I'm on at the moment is living life with passion and purpose. You only get one shot at life. Go out there and give it your best shot. Whatever that is for you, you could be to climb the corporate ladder, to be the best version of yourself. It could be to start a business, but follow your passion and purpose is probably my core message. So there are people that do jump on this show that are at that point or that fork in the road where, do I stay in my job? Do I follow my dreams? Do I find my why? Whatever it is. You talk a bit about highest values and what you were talking about there. You're unstoppable when you find that purpose. Do you want to elaborate on that? Because I know that a lot of your teachings are about values and highest purpose and so on.
Yep. Every human being, regardless of age, gender, culture, creed, lives moment by moment by a set of priorities or values, things that are most to least important in their life. That set of values, that hierarchy of values, is unique, fingerprint specific. No two people ever have the same exact set of values, because they're made out of the voids of perceptions that they've experienced through their journey. And whatever's highest on that value list is intrinsic, and we spontaneously are inspired to fulfill it. But whatever's lower on those value lists are becoming extrinsic, and they require outside motivation to get us to do it. So we excel in our highest values, and we tend to decelerate in our lowest. We're inspired from within, and we need motivation without. Like a boy who loves his video games. Nobody has to remind him to do his video games, but they may have to remind him to do his chores, his homework, clean his room. And they'll have to motivate him or punish him somehow, reward or punish him to do it. But if you need motivation from the outside, you haven't found your mission on the inside. This highest value, whatever that is for an individual, the ancient Greeks called it telos, which is the end in mind. All other values are means to an end. And the study of that, which is called teleology, is a study of meaning and purpose. So it is the most meaningful, most purposeful, most inspiring, and most fulfilling thing we can pursue in our life. And knowing oneself revolves around that highest value. My highest value is teaching. I'm a teacher. My identity revolves around what I value most. Whatever that is, it's highest on an individual's values, their life's identity revolves around. Now, the question is most people are searching for this, and they cloud it by subordination to other people and conforming and living in the shadows of other people and giving power and brain offloading decisions onto others to decide what they should do, ought to do, supposed to do, got to do, have to do, instead of what they would love to do. And as a result of it, they inject all the values of the authorities into their life, cloud the clarity of their own mission, and then kind of multitask their way through life and depreciate their energy levels and fractionate themselves instead of integrate themselves. So the way you find out what that real highest value is to look at what your life demonstrates, not your fantasies, not what you say, but what your life demonstrates. The way you fill your space, the way you spend your time, the thing that really inspires you with energy, the thing you will spend your money on spontaneously, the thing you have the greatest order around, the thing that you spontaneously are disciplined to do without having to be reminded, the thing you think about, visualize, and internally dialogue with yourself about how you would love your life to be that shows evidence of coming true, the thing you keep wanting to converse with other people about and bring the conversation to, the thing that inspires you, and the thing that's common to the people who you've actually looked up to and inspired by. The most consistent goals that you have actually pursued that are perseverant that are coming true. And what do you spontaneously want to go and study and read and learn and watch on YouTube? If you look at those value determinants, they will reiterate themselves towards this highest value. And if you look honestly and integrally, on my website, drdemartini.com, I have a 13 value determination process that they can go for free. It's complimentary. It's private. You can do it as many times as you want. But go through there with integrity and honestly answer those questions. And it'll print out and it'll show you what your life's demonstrating, what's important to you. Then structuring your life wisely through delegations and priorities, living and filling your day with the highest priority actions that inspire you, and surrounding yourself with people that you can delegate lower priority distractions that don't, and making sure you do something that's deeply meaningful, that serves other people, that allows you to have sustainable, fair exchange, so you get rewarded economically to pay for the delegations, is the path of the entrepreneur and the individual who's liberated to live an inspired life. That, to me, is a life worth pursuing.
Yeah. And is it possible that, let's say someone is sitting, or listening to this, but they just don't know what it is that they want to do, or they don't, if they do that questionnaire, are they likely to find out what their actual pursuit is?
I have hundreds of thousands of people that have done that. So it's not a question about whether it will help. I'm certain it will help. I've helped too many thousands of people do this. But the question is, it's the integrity of your own answers is the key.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the questions are not going to ask you what you want it to be, what you would hope it to be, what you wish it would be, what it used to be, what is you want it to be in the future. It's what does your life demonstrate? Because your life demonstrates your values. Because your values determine how you perceive, decide, and act moment by moment. So identifying what your life is demonstrating may not match your fantasy, and you may not want to face what it says because you may want this fantasy. Let me give you an example. If I'm speaking in front of thousands of people and I say, how many of you want to be financially independent? Every hand's going to go up. But less than 1% make it. So there's a lot of people with fantasies but the hierarchy of their values dictates their financial destiny. And if they have a higher desire in their value structure to buy consumables that depreciate in value, and then therefore they become slaves to money and work their whole life for money to buy things that are overpriced brands to make them feel temporarily, transiently better about themselves because they're not inspired by what their life is and not building their own brand, they're not going to be financially independent. But the person or the individual that really, really wants to be financially independent will make sure that money that they earn, a very high percentage of it will be buying assets for long-term accumulation so their money can work for them and they don't have to work for it. And they become its master, not its slave. And then they crescendo their life over time instead of decline their life over time because now they can't work and now they've never saved and now they're having to decline. So wisdom is a negentropic pathway of pursuing what is deeply meaningful in a fair exchange to be able to earn the income, to do what you love to do, to exemplify what's possible, to inspire other people and inspire the economy to help people fulfill their lives. And so, yes, that exercise, I'm absolutely certain, will help an individual move that step, one more step closer to that objective. But they got to be honest with them, what their values are, because a lot of people will lie to themselves about what's important. They'll tell you social idealisms. They'll tell you what their mother, father, preacher, teacher, convention, mores, and traditions want to say. And they'll say things that they think they should be writing instead of what their life demonstrates. We're not here to compare ourselves to other people. We're here to compare our own daily actions to what we value most and stick to priority. If we do, our self-worth goes up, our space-time horizons expand, our natural-born leader emerges, we go into our executive center, we have self-governance, we think creatively and wake up our genius.
Yeah, and you're a human behaviour specialist and helping people, I guess, find that passion and purpose. How would you describe, the human behaviour, I guess, in general, like as a specialist?
How would I describe human behavior?
Yeah, like it.
Well, human behavior is broad. Any sensory perception, any decision, and any action or reaction that an individual takes is human behavior. So it pretty well is encompassing everything that a human being can do. So there are certain principles that underlie human behavior that are predictable. And studying those principles is what I have been focusing on all these years, to maximize feedback from our lives. Because I really believe that our physiology, our psychology, our sociology, and our outer theological constructs are offering us feedback to be the most authentic individual we can be. Our brain is designed to help us become authentic and integral to what's truly deeply meaningful. And anytime we get distracted through conforming, instead of being really focused and enorming, we hold ourselves back and we create symptomatology that is actually a feedback to let us know we're not being authentic. Everything that goes on in our life is actually on the way, not in the way. And it's guiding us to an inspired life. But we misinterpret it because we think we're supposed to be, should be, ought to be somebody we're not. As Einstein said, when you're a cat, expecting to swim like a fish, you're going to beat yourself up. But if you honor yourself as a cat, you'll honor what your capabilities are. And accessing your highest values and your greatest potential by being honest with what that is and prioritizing your life and living accordingly, you get to honor your cat and not try to be somebody you're not.
So somebody coming to you doing like a breakthrough experience, a 2-day event or something like that, what does that look like? Because there will be people on this podcast that will go, look, I'd really like to find that passion and purpose, that why, that highest value. And I know, Emily, who's a common friend of ours, has been to it many times and revisits that. What does a breakthrough experience look like for somebody that may be interested?
Well, the breakthrough experience is a program that I've done and delivered and presented 1,100 times. And I presented it in 65 countries to hundreds of thousands of people now. So it's been something I've been doing almost 32 years. It is 2 days about 25 hours, 26 hours, 24 hours, depending on the weekend, dedicated to transforming whatever you perceive as an individual in your way to on the way, to helping you clarify what it is that you're really truly inspired by so you're not clouded and distracted, to help you structure your life where it's efficient and effective at achieving it, and helping you dissolve the emotional baggage that is distracting you, because your subconscious mind stores all of the polarized, emotional, incomplete perceptions and awarenesses that you've had, which cloud the mind, and show you how to have more inspiration, enthusiasm, gratitude, and love, certainty, and presence in life. I also show you how to not subordinate to outer authorities, not to be disrespectful, but just not to subordinate and to question. Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. And Einstein said, my contempt for authority is what made me one. It's giving yourself permission to think authentically and create original ideas that serve it, because you won't make a difference fitting in, you'll make a difference standing out. So the breakthrough experience is about breaking through the barriers and the self-imposed limitations that we put on ourselves trying to conform, and give us our permission to go after what's extraordinary that we really feel called to do in life. And be willing to build momentum, incremental momentum, to achieve it patiently, instead of looking for immediate gratification, which costs us our real life. So the program is not a rah-rah session. It's not a standing on chairs. It's not a music and all that stuff. It's a very masterful accumulation in 47, almost 48 years of research and teaching on how to master your life. It's for people that want to lead their life and govern their life and become masterful at what they do and become the greatest at what they want to be. It's work, so don't sit and think it's going to be purely infotainment. It's going to be entertaining, but it's going to be work. You're going to sit down and you're going to go to work, and I'm going to teach you the principles and the methods that allow you to master your life. I'm a firm believer that you can empower all areas of life. When I was 18 to 20 years old, I had a dream to create original ideas that serve humanity, that's original, that's completely original in the world. I want to create a global business, an international business. I want to become financially independent. I want to have a global relationship and a family. I want to be able to do something social and hang out with the most amazing people on the planet and hang out with the movers and shakers. I want to be able to have a physical, vital body, which at 66 almost, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I want to do something inspiring. I didn't want to follow as a herd. I wanted to lead a culture. And all of those 7 things are now true in my life. So it'd be impossible to convince me that you can't, no matter where you start, because I started from the streets and with not even knowing how to read. I'm absolutely certain it doesn't matter where you start, what you've gone through, what you've been through. What matters is you're going to follow the principles and methodologies that will give you a result. And that's what this program's about, to help a person empower those areas of life. Because if you don't empower yourself intellectually, you'll be told what to think. You don't empower yourself in business, you'll be told what to do. If you don't empower yourself in finances, you'll be told what you're worth. If you don't empower yourself in relationship, you'll be trapped in an unfulfilling dynamic. If you don't empower yourself socially, you'll be told propaganda to believe, misinformation. If you don't empower yourself physically, you'll be told what drugs to take and what organs to remove. If you don't empower yourself spiritually, you may be in an antiquated dogma without realizing it. So I'm interested in people that want to stand out, not just fit in. I want to do something extraordinary, not just ordinary, and help people actually build momentum towards a real inspiring dream and vision and purpose, something that's meaningful that makes the difference.
Wow. That sounds like an incredible event. I did do an event last year and you touched on something about love, gratitude. So I went away with some, amazing entrepreneurs for a weekend, and it was about conscious wealth creating. And one of the segments we're talking about what drives you from a fuel perspective, and you can have success, physical or financial success, driven by, I'm going to prove you wrong, and you can still make it to the top financially, but you find yourself when you're driven by that style of fuel, anger, hate, whatever it might be, you get to you sell your business, for example, you'd still feel empty, but then you can get to the top and love, gratitude, all of that type of fuel, you get to the top and you've got that fulfillment. Do you want to expand on that type of conversation?
Sure. Money circulates through the economy from those who value it least to those who value it most. Just like people circulate through sociology from those who value them least to those who value it most. And many people think they value money, but what they do is they value what it buys, and they don't value the actual mastery of sustainable fair exchange with equity and equanimity. And money without meaning leads to debauchery and immediate gratifications and consumption and sometimes addiction. But money with meaning leads to philanthropy, something you want to contribute to the planet. And so the mastery of money is one of the 7 areas of life. I'm not going to put it above or below any of the other ones, but I do believe that we're here to master it. And our life will constantly give us symptomatology if we don't. And we're not likely to be as fulfilled if we're not mastering that, because we'll be distracted by it. Many of the challenges we have in life are economic challenges. So mastering that is I'm interested in. And finding out what you would absolutely love to do. And then finding out somebody who would love to receive that service or that product. And then creating a sustainable fair exchange where there's not narcissism trying to get something for nothing or altruism trying to give something for nothing, but a true non-zero sum game exchange that's a transaction that's sustainable, builds momentum because both partners in the transaction want to continue. And the mastery of that is the mastery of life. It's the mastery for relationships, the mastery of spirituality, it's the mastery of health. The same mastery that encompasses all of them are also mastered through finances. So all of the areas of our life are trying to teach us some basic principles. And if we master them, we get to excel in all those areas. And so wealth building comes from the word wheel, which means health. Wealth and health have the same roots. Why? Because socioeconomically, people live longer when they have wealth. In South Africa, there's some townships where people don't live past 48. But in a socioeconomically more stable country, they live to 70s, 80s, up into 90s, and even more. So the mastery of wealth is the mastery of your own mind, because until you can govern your own self, you won't master wealth. Until you can govern your emotions, because emotions are the number one things that undermine wealth building. So the mastery of your own self and the mastery with your executive center over your amygdala, your desire center, is the game of mastery of wealth. And so I love teaching that because it's really about human mastery. I just use the financial vehicle as a way of measuring your mastery. Just like your relationship is a vehicle. All these are the mechanisms. Your health is a feedback to let you know if you're mastering your emotions. Because entropy, the tendency to go from order to disorder, we tend to go to disorder with emotions when we're out of control. When we're infatuated and we're conscious of the upsides and unconscious of the downsides, we're preoccupied in our mind, and space and time in our mind is preoccupied by what we're infatuated with. The same thing for what we resent. So we don't really have calmness and centeredness of mind, and you might say a calm mind. We have a distracted mind when we have these emotions. But when we're centered and we have gratitude, which is not an emotion, it's transcendent to the emotion. It's a hypercognitive or metacognitive state. Love, inspiration, enthusiasm, certainty, and presence. These are transcendental states of mind that a masterful individual has obtained, where they're not swayed by the polarizations of emotions, and they're centered and they're focused and they're inspired by a mission. And that individual helps them empower all their areas of life. And I love helping people do that. That's what my mission and message is.
And just a few really interesting, you talked about narcissism there. That fascinates me, like, how people behave. But I think ego is one of the things that really, for me, I find quite fascinating when people they don't see their blind spot towards their own ego and their lack of self-awareness. What would you say to, or how would you explain ego and how does it impact the way you do things in life?
Well, if we use the Freudian ego, he had the tripartite portions of the psyche, which he had three parts: the ego, the id, and the superego. Now, if we superimpose the hierarchy of values, when you're living by your highest value and you're more objective and you have reason in the executive center, he called that the ego. When you're down in lower values and you have more desire center of impulse and instinct, seeking prey, avoiding predators, seeking pleasure, trying to avoid pain, he called it the pleasure principle. You have the id. The id is the instinctual, impulsive, ungoverned animal behavior within us. Then you also, when you compare yourself to other people and put them on pedestals and inject their value, their outer authority becomes a superego, whispering to you, moralizing ideas about how you should be. So whenever you hear yourself talking, I should, I ought to, so I'm supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, I need to, those are all injected values of outer authorities. And the injected values of outer authorities give rise to the superego. The superego is the subordination to an outer authority. The superego, whenever you're abiding by those rules of society and conforming, you feel proud. And whenever you don't, you feel shamed. And the proud is what is called the false ego. And the false ego has been entwined in much literature, in Buddhist literature, Eastern mysticism, and some New Age movements. They have intertwined true ego and false ego, primarily because of a misinterpretation of Freud, because when you're living by your truest ego, your highest value, you tend to expand. And they confuse an expanded mind with pride. And so you need to distinguish, in my opinion, the true ego, which is the I, which is the true self, and the false ego, which is the inflated self, when you feel like you're conforming and you're proud and you're showing off to the public because you're fitting into the society's norms. But the true ego undermines the false ego undermines the true self, the true ego. And people confuse those two. And that is the pitfall, because pride before the fall, it's a hubris expression. And so we're here to live by our highest values, where we're more objective and we're more true to ourselves and authentic. That's what our brain is trying to do. But when we're not doing that and we're subordinating and we're offloading decisions and we give power to authorities, we divide ourselves up and we get caught in our id and our superego. And that superego then distracts us and creates a sadomasochistic attempt at trying to stop the real ego from being expressed. Just like if you go out there and go against the average things of what people think, they try to push you back and try to get you to fit in, to conform. So wisdom is living by what's highest on our value. And that does not in any way hinder your authentic self. That is your authentic self. Your identity revolves around that highest value. So many people have confused the true ego from the false ego. And the true ego is not something to suppress, it's something to appreciate. It's the false ego that's been mislabeled that is the one that it's wise to keep under check and balance and not let it distract you from what's truly your calling.
Mm. And I want to put forward a real life case study for you now, and just I'll explain the circumstance and let you unpackage it, because my whole book, my podcast, everything's been driven off a circumstance that happened on January 24th, 2014, where my wife and I went into hospital for a regular checkup, and then we was told that there is no heartbeat here, you're going to have to deliver this baby. And I walked into that hospital on a trajectory. I was having success in business, life, I was happy, everything was good, but I felt I left that hospital as a different person. And everything that I've done since then, whether it was doing the eulogy, whether it was every year I write a tribute on a birthday to my son that didn't get a chance to present himself on this life. And then I met Emily by chance last year. We were introduced, and I told her what I wanted to do, and that's 5 years later. So I feel like it's manifested into writing a book, and this is where I am, and I'm deeply passionate about what I'm doing now, and I feel that this is a story that can help, I can carry the torch, help inspire. But in that hospital, that 48 hours, I felt it was such a surreal, I've never experienced any other circumstance like it, luckily, but I describe it quite often as an out-of-body experience. Like you were forced, you had no chance, you had to watch your wife deliver, you're holding a stillborn baby, you're signing birth and death certificates. It was just crazy. But I also talk about that experience as my greatest challenge, become my biggest blessing in life as well. Is there anything in there, that you would be able to share with your experience over your time?
We have inside our brain and subcortical areas and hypothalamic area, we have a thing called the autonomic nervous system. And it helps regulate physiology. And there's two divisions, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. One has classically been associated with fight or flight, when we get challenged to our highest values. And the other is rest and digest, when we get supported. So one is catabolic, one is anabolic. One represents predator attacking us, catabolizing us. One represents prey that we anabolize with by growing and eating. And so when we get challenged, that fight or flight mechanism is our response. If we think we can conquer it, we fight it. If we don't think we can conquer it, we flight it. If we can't fight something and we can't flight something, we go into what is called a freeze response. A freeze response is like a possum that goes and plays dead because it realizes it can't outrun the predator and it can't fight the predator. So the third response is acting dead because predators stop going after something that's dead. They won't eat something that's dead unless they're, a vulture or something like that are scavengers. So what happens is when we're in a situation, a very traumatic situation that we're perceiving as traumatic, there's no way to run from it and there's no way to solve it. Our brain will go into a freeze response. When it goes to the freeze response, the parieto-temporal region of the brain lights up. It comes online. It's the same place they have in temporal lobe epilepsy very commonly. And there's a region, particularly on one side, the left side, that lights up when we're in that situation where we feel like there's nothing we can do. We have to embrace what's here. We can't fight it, can't flight it. We freeze. And we feel, in a sense, a moment of powerlessness and a feeling like we just have to go with the flow and just be with whatever's happening. In that moment, we activate that parietal temporal region. And there's a segment there, that region, if you stimulate it with magnetic stimulation, it stimulates into what is called hyperreligiosity. And hyperreligiosity is the dissociation. It's a dissociation response that takes whatever we're experiencing and creates the opposite to counterbalance it in our mind to stabilize us. So if we feel trapped, we'll imagine something free. If we feel cold, we imagine something warm. If we feel in darkness, we'll imagine light. We will perceive in our brain whatever counterbalances it to stabilize us from this perception of freeze, to handle in case we get eaten. It's a survival mechanism that goes on inside the animal. And in our amygdala, in those subcortical areas of the brain also, the response from that area of the brain give us those experiences. And we use it as survival. And many people in these dissociated freeze responses have mystical experiences, out-of-body experience. They feel that they're talking to angelic states or gods. They believe that even Muhammad, believe it or not, we have no proof of it, but there's people that believe in psychology that he showed signs of this because he was about to hurl himself off Mount Hira when he started getting Quran verses. So people, and I've seen probably 50 cases of a dissociative state that has incredible insights and visions and inspirations and near-death experiences and everything else around it, because you really have that. You're literally having a near-death experience. So it's a brain response that can create a mystical response that then can be a catalyst to take this trauma and turn it into an amazing opportunity. And it's a survival mechanism in the brain to help us deal with things we don't see any alternative ways of handling. And it's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just the brain doing its job, trying to bring homeostasis to physiology and psychology. And out of it have come some of the greatest writers, some of the greatest mystics, some of the greatest religions, some of the greatest movies, stories, So you may have got your calling in that moment. And so if that's the case, then you can be thankful and dedicate some of the commitment that you have now and thank your son and thank your wife and thank for the whole experience for manifesting, because it led you down your path.
Thank you for explaining. So you've touched on spiritual a few times. Do you want to elaborate on spirituality? Like, you know, some people associate that with religion. Some people say it's not religion. What's your personal perspective on that?
I teach a course that's a 7-day course, and one of the days of the 7-day course is on the anthropological evolution of religious understanding through history. Many writers have described the religions are built layer upon layer syncretically, with all antecedents building on the next layer of religious sediment, you might say, or spiritual sediment, because it's not necessarily religion, but it's spiritual traditions or spiritual philosophies. And there's no doubt in my mind, studying 3,000 different religions and spiritual traditions, that they follow brain development, anthropological brain development. No doubt left in my mind. I've been studying it for so long. So the bottom level of religious development or spiritual development is avoid pain, seek pleasure. Avoid predator, seek prey. Avoid dark, seek light. Avoid evil, seek good. It's highly polarized. And the pursuit of one side, in Buddhism, they say the desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is the source of human suffering. So that's the bottom layer, the lowest sediment, the most primitive amygdala subcortical part of our brain surviving out there and creating a dissociative response and creating a veneration for that which we believe will protect us from that which frightens us. And that's the lowest level of religion. So we create, in a sense, God figures or father figures, or if we are frightened of animals, we'll create animals that protect us. If we're frightened of earth, we'll create the earth goddess that will protect us or something. If we're frightened of man, we'll create anthropomorphic deities. We'll dissociate with that same area of the brain and we'll create zoomorphic and anthropomorphic and geomorphic religious constructs and iconographies. But eventually we move and we bang our head against the wall, hoping that something dissociated on the outside is going to protect us and hoping that something on the outside doesn't attack us. We eventually move from an extrinsic form of religious or spiritual awareness to eventually an intrinsic one. And we realize that it's our perception of that thing that's frightening us, and it's our perception in our mind that's doing this. And this damnation and soteriological salvation are not external, they're internal. And we eventually realize that we're both the hero and the villain inside us based on our perceptions. In the Bardo Thadal, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it says, at the moment of passing, we are confronted by both peaceful and wrathful deities, but fear not, for they are nothing more than projections of our own imagination, trying to be integrated on the way to the void of light. And so the highest level of spiritual development transcends all the anthropomorphisms, zoomorphisms, geomorphisms, all the iconographies, and transcend anything that's localized that we might venerate, and realize that there's a higher order to things, an implicate order, a divine magnificence, a divine love that's the matrix behind all things, that we feareth not and seeketh not, for it is all present. And there's nothing to avoid and seek. There's nothing to be looking down on or up on. It's just something to embrace with our heart and realize that it's going on 24 hours a day with every experience that we perceive in a perfect synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites. So we can move from a highly polarized spiritual understanding that has been indoctrinated and institutionalized into religious constructs, or we can transcend it and create an impersonalized or personalized, if you want to personalize it, state of being that we have access to when we probe deeper into the mysteries, the celestial mysteries that transcend the terrestrial localized histories and tribal thinkings. So spirituality is anything that inspires you, and we're more accessing of it when we're living congruently with what our highest values are. We're more objective, we're more neutral, we're more loving and adaptable and resilient to whatever happens. And we actually see everything on the way, not in the way. And we honor it, and we're grateful for it. And gratitude is the key that opens up the gateway of the heart and allows love to come out, radiates out, inspires the mind, enthuses the body, brings certainty and presence, and an awe and a gratitude for our existence. So to me, that's the evolution of spirituality.
Yeah, and you did mention a bit about heart there, and it just brought up a common phrase that you hear often. You've made a decision based on your heart over your head, or you're making decisions from head over heart. How would you explain that?
Well, I would go further, because you have inside you, there's 3 brains that they've identified now. You have an enteric brain, which has neurons and releases neurotransmitters inside the gut, the duodenum primarily. You have a heart brain. There's neurons literally in certain regions of the heart. They've now confirmed, and they're teasing them out, differentiating them, and looking at their fibers. And there's also one that's in the maximum cortical brain and the subcortical brain, the brain proper, and the central nervous system. When you're living by impulse and instinct, the duodenum, the gut brain runs. So impulse, gut impulse, and gut instinct is down below. And that's there for surviving by running away from predator and seeking prey. So whenever you're emotional and you're distressed and seeking something or avoiding something and fearing the loss of that which you seek and fearing the gain of that which you're trying to avoid, the gut brain comes online with impulses and instincts to help you survive. It's a survival mode. Then you use your brain proper to reason through those, to take and move through the lower brain systems to a higher brain system, to the executive center, which is the medial prefrontal cortex. When that area lights up and comes online, it brings objectivity. And objectivity means a balanced, even mind where equanimity occurs. The moment you do, the heart brain comes online. And the heart opens, if you will, metaphorically. And that is where wisdom is revealed. And love is pronounced. So the moment we live in a perfect equanimity and have objectivity, and we see things as they are, not as we judge them to be, the heart opens and guides our actions. And when we're not, and we're judging something, our duodenum runs and we deal with reactions. And reactions are polarized, they're called emotions, and the heart is synthesized, and it's called love. And love's the synthesis and synchronicity of all positive and negative emotions, all the polarities. So the heart must guide our life. But we don't want to do it at the expense of the brain, the proper brain. We want to have the brain in its executive center function where we use reason, because that's when we're wise and we act wisely. So it's not that we do it separately from the brain. We use the forebrain, not the hindbrain. The emotions deal with the hindbrain. The love of the heart guides with the forebrain. So when we have foresight and inspiration and we can see things as they are, in actuality, we have the heart open and we're inspired by our actions, because we need the brain to be able to move our muscles, to act wisely. But if we're not, we're in our gut brain, and it causes emotional reactions to use the same brain for the sake of survival. One is thrival, one is survival. One is foresight, one is hindsight. One is the heart, one is the duodenum.
And just the last question before I ask my my rapid fire questions. We're in a really uncertain times at the moment with COVID-19. People's human behaviour is probably, buzzing at different levels that it normally does, and also people's businesses are under distress, but some people are looking and seeing this as huge opportunities. How would you, or what would you advise people to do, during this situation? Lean in to listen to your intuition about what to do moving forward. What's your opinion currently during this uncertain time?
Well, first of all, you mentioned intuition. When you're conscious of the upsides and unconscious of the downsides, when you're infatuated, your intuition is trying to point out the downsides to get you back in equilibrium. When you're resentful and you're conscious of the downsides and unconscious of the upsides, your intuition is trying to point out the upsides to get you in equilibrium. Your intuition is a negative feedback loop to try to bring you back into homeostasis where you're balanced. Now, Corona, I call it Saint Corona, is not the cause of anything. It's our perception of Corona that's the cause of our reality. Because I have people who have wisely listened to what I've been teaching them. And when they found Corona appearing back in early March, they started writing down the upsides to what they thought were downsides and balancing it out, and used this experience as a momentum building, innovative, creative time to do more extraordinary things with their life. They've also balanced out their equation and kept themselves in their executive center and used it and turned it into the most amazing opportunity. But the people that are in their amygdala and in their gut and they're avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, they're going to see the downsides, not the upsides. Or they're going to fantasize about how it used to be or how they hope it would be and see the positive sides without the downsides. And as long as they're ungoverned and uncontrolled and not balanced and not in equanimity, they're going to be chaotically distracted by the outer world. And it has nothing to do with the outer world. It's their choice of perceptions of the outer world. William James in 1895 said that the greatest discovery of our generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their perceptions and attitudes of mind. It's our perceptions, decisions, and actions we have governance over. So if we choose to see Corona as a disturbance, then that will be. If we choose to see it as an opportunity, then that will be. And all you have to do is ask the right question, because the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask the question, why is this happening? Dang, it's not the way I wanted it. It's not matching my fantasy. It used to be this. You're probably going to be stressed and distressed, and it's going to run you down and run your business down. But if you ask, instead of comparing my current reality to a fantasy of the past or future, and just get present, what exactly is objectively happening today? And how specific can I use this right now, on the way, not in the way? How can I use whatever is happening right now to help me fulfill what's most important to me in my life? What's the highest priority action I can do right now to take this real situation and turn it into an opportunity? If you do that, you'll see it on the way and you'll use it and build momentum from it. If not, you'll run your story. And people who become victims of history running a story are not the people who become masters of destiny and creating a new story.
That's very good advice. So just in wrapping up, always ask a few rapid fire questions. What book, apart from your own, because we're going to lead people to your website and books in a second, but what book would you advise people that they should read to have big impact on their life, you know, if they're looking to pursue happiness and get ahead?
Well, I don't encourage people to pursue happiness. I encourage them to search for what Aristotle called eudaimonia, which is well-being and fulfillment. Because the fleetingness of the emotions of happiness and sadness are like oscillations on a tick-tock. But I do believe that the two great volumes that people can learn from is Syntopicon Volumes 1 and 2 by Mortimer Adler. It's a 2-volume set. It's about 2,000 pages. But it's a summary of the greatest minds over the last 2,700 years who have lived, that have written about the most important topics that a human being can master. So these 2 volumes, produced by Britannica, the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Great Ideas series, is the most significant 2 books I can recommend anybody to read. If you read these books, these 2 volumes, slowly but surely, little by little, it's a PhD on life. And I'm not interested in self-development fads. I'm not interested in quick schemes. You know, I'm interested in standing the test of time, materials that will stand the test of time that are solid. These 2 volumes will give people a solid foundation to build a very profoundly and powerful life.
And how do you spell that or pronounce that again?
Syntopicon, Volumes 1 and 2 by Britannica, Mortimer Adler. This man has done a masterpiece of putting these 2 volumes together, and it's extremely well referenced. And it's a summary of the greatest minds over the last 2,700 years who've lived, writing about the most important topics a human being can learn.
Beautiful. And what's the best advice you've ever received?
Well, I was hitchhiking from Houston, Texas to Los Angeles I was stuck in El Paso, Texas, downtown. I got confronted by 3 cowboys in the middle of the road. They wanted to beat up the hippie. Somehow I spontaneously didn't know what to do, but something came to me and I barked at them and growled at them, made them step aside. And I came across a gentleman who is leaning on a lamppost, laughing his butt off, who just saw me take care of the cowboys. He took me to a malt shop. Then he took me to a library. And he told me 2 things that he told me never to forget. Number 1, never judge a book by its cover. It will fool you. Because he said to me that he's one of the wealthiest men that ever lived, one of the wealthiest men that on the planet. He had cars and ships and planes and businesses and homes. And then he said, so don't ever judge a book by its cover because you'll probably think I'm some bum on the street. And he did. He looked like an ordinary guy. And then he said, he took my right hand, he put him on top of 2 books, which was Plato and Aristotle. He said, young man, you learn how to read. Because there's only 2 things they can never take away from you, and that is the love of wisdom and the wisdom of love. You learn how to read, and you gain the wisdom of love and the love of wisdom. So don't judge a book by its cover, and you learn to read and learn how to gain wisdom and love of wisdom. That man turned out to be Howard Hughes. I met him when I was 14 years old, and that was the advice that I've run my life by ever since. My cufflinks say love and wisdom, and it's a reminder to make sure you open your heart and guide your life with your heart and use your brain wisely. So that's the best advice that I've received from any man in my life.
And on the flip side to that, is there the worst advice that stands out to you?
Well, the worst advice I think you'll ever get is when you don't listen to your own heart and follow your own priorities, and you conform to society instead of stand out. And anybody that guides you to fit in instead of stand out, I would say thank you, but no thank you.
Yep. And with you obviously, your website, you've got lots of resources. You gave us one earlier with the 13 questionnaire. Where do we find out more about you and your website? Is there any other good resources people should look at on your website? And when's your next event's going to be? Because
well, the website is drdemartini.com, DRDEMARTINI.com, and it is an educational experience. There are thousands of radio, television, newspapers, magazines. I write for 1,500 magazines around the world. So there's thousands of radio, television, newspaper, magazines, podcasts, webinar information on there that you can watch to complement. There's also online programs and products that I've produced over the years. And there's also online education programs that are live that you can tap into, webinars and things that we do. So you can go on there and just browse the website and probably spend the rest of your life on there. And it's an educational. It's there to empower all 7 areas of life. So if you go digging into media and look at all the educational materials or online YouTube things, there's hundreds and hundreds of YouTubes, thousands of them. You can just educate yourself. But the value determination process is a complementary thing that I would encourage everybody to do, and do it again and again until they are absolutely certain they know, now I know what I'm committed to in life. Finding that purpose. If you need motivation from the outside, you haven't found your mission on the inside. So I'm not interested in motivating people. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm a person who educates people on how to live an inspired life and master their life. And that's what my website's for. And live seminars, it has where I am. If you look under events, it says where I am and what I'm doing online or where I am live. And I have 76 courses I teach and thousands of evening programs I've done. So there's plenty of stuff on there that keep people busy.
And just from my end, my book and my vision mission is all around, helping people live with passion and purpose. And, we've probably had the biggest, most influential speaker, author, person that's trained hundreds of thousands of people in 65 odd countries. And from my perspective, you've added a lot of value to today's episode. And, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank you for taking the time because I know you're very busy and jumping on and adding the value that you have done today.
No, thank you for the opportunity. You know, we're on a mission. And so when you meet missionaries, you want to help other people fulfill their mission too. Zig Ziglar taught me if I help other people fulfill their mission, it helps me fulfill mine. So you're doing that for me. So thank you for that. And you mentioned Emily. Emily's a very unique lady who's now one of the great writers also. And she's done the same thing, making a difference in serving people's mission. And so we're all on that mission. So thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to I'd love to get a copy of it so I can put that on my archives and let people know about it. And thank you. And may you continue to serve so many people.
Yes, and we were going to do this in person, but due to circumstances, it is online now. But I would like to definitely come along and meet you in person, and that would be a great honour.
No, thank you. I look forward to it.
You've got one shot, so take it. You live one life, embrace it. Don't let fear tie you down, it'll mess you around. You've got one shot.